20 students vanished without a trace on a school trip in 1987. For 22 years, their families waited, begged, searched. Then one morning, deep in the Missouri woods, a hiker found their missing school bus. Burned, melted, empty, no bodies inside, just one ring, and a message carved into steel. That would shake everything they thought they knew. He came with us. It happened on a Tuesday, October 6, 1987. Clear skies, low fog along the mountain road, and a yellow school bus that never came back. There were 20 students on board, seniors from Larkspur High, small town Missouri, one teacher, one driver, and a promise that they'd be home by 5. They were heading to Dry Creek Reserve, a dense stretch of woods, cliffs, and forgotten Civil War ruins. It was supposed to be just a history trip, a 2-hour drive. Out, lunch, back. But at 4:55 p.m., when the parents stood waiting outside the school gates, the parking lot remained quiet. Too quiet. The yellow bus never returned. At first, there was calm. A few late arrivals, maybe traffic, probably. Tires may be flat. But at 5:20, a mother called the school. Then another, and by 5:37 p.m., the panic had bloomed. The bus radio didn't answer. The ranger station never saw them, and the state patrol couldn't find their route. By 6:15, the parents were crying. By 7 o'clock, police cars lined the roads. By 9 o'clock, the town of Larkspur changed forever. The last known photograph was taken at 12:14 p.m. A ranger named Ellis Pike had snapped it near the visitor center. It showed the children gathered at the trailhead, maps in hand, backpacks half-zipped, smiles halfway real. A few looked off camera. One girl had her eyes closed. The teacher, Ms. Harrow, was seen pointing at something behind her, maybe the hilltop ruins. No one knew it then, but that photo would become the last proof they ever existed. Dry Creek was massive, over 1,900 wooded acres, twisting trails, old silver mines long collapsed. Cell service was non-existent, not that it mattered in 1987. The bus was logged entering the park at 11:42 a.m. It was never seen leaving. The investigation moved fast. At first, dozens of volunteers combed the park. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled. Divers checked the old quarry lake. Nothing. No shoe prints. No backpacks. No notes. No tire tracks. Not even a gum wrapper. It was as if 20 teenagers and 2 adults had walked into the trees and vanished into air. Some claimed it was the cliffs. A wrong step. A group fall. But 22 people? All at once? And no bodies? Others whispered about caves. The abandoned mine shafts. Places that hadn't been mapped in 70 years. And there were the locals. The ones who said Dry Creek was cursed. That the land was too old. That it didn't like to be disturbed. They pointed to the ranger's cabin. The one boarded up in 74. Said something lived near there. Something that watched hikers, but never left prints. Of course, police ignored those stories, filed them under folklore. But in town, the silence grew thicker, and the woods grew darker. By November, the search was scaled back. By December, it was quietly ended. The bus was never found. The students were never found. And every year on October 6th, the parents stood in front of the school gates and waited anyway. There was one oddity, one that haunted investigators for decades. In the photo taken at 12:14 p.m., there were 20 students. But when the ranger was interviewed, he said something else. He said, there were 21. I counted. I always count. It's my job. They showed him the photo. He pointed to each child. Not her. Not him. No, that boy with the red sleeves. I didn't see him, but there was another one. What did he look like? They asked. The ranger went quiet, then said, I don't remember his face, but he was staring at me, and he didn't blink. The boy with red sleeves was never identified. He wasn't a student. He wasn't on the roster. He didn't belong there. The only copy of that photo was placed in the case file, Room 213, Larkspur PD. But in 1993, when a new detective reopened the case, that file was gone, and so was the photo. No copies, no negatives, just a sticky note left behind, for words, in handwriting no one recognized. He came with them. Years passed. The town changed. The school rebuilt the East Wing. Dry Creek was closed after a landslide, and the story of the missing students faded into legend. Parents moved. Some died. Others stayed, clinging to hope or bitterness or both. And then, in March of 2009, a man named Paul Granger called the county. He was hiking west of Dry Creek, near the back trails. He'd found something. It's metal, he said. Large. Burned. I think it's a bus. The police arrived the next morning. It was buried under foliage. The chassis warped. The windows melted. Every inch scorched. But they found the number still etched on the license plate. 742 GN. The bus from Larkspur High. Missing since 1987. Not crashed. Not rolled. Not buried. Burned. Deliberately. In the middle of nowhere. And inside, nothing. No bodies. No bones. Not a single trace of the children. Except one. A melted ring stuck between the seat cushions. It belonged to Sarah Tilley, age 17. She'd worn it every day since 1986. Her mother had given it to her after she survived a car crash. It had the word "stay" etched on the inside. That discovery broke the town again. Old wounds reopened. Questions surged. Who burned the bus? Why now, 22 years later? And where were the students all that time? And one more thing. Near the rear exit, carved into the metal, was something sharp. Were 4 words. Fresh, clear, impossible. He came with us. The ring was real. Sarah Tilley's name was engraved on the inside, and the metal had partially fused to the rubber beneath the bus seat, as if it had melted there slowly. The heat had been intense. Not a forest fire. Not lightning. The bus was intentionally burned, investigators agreed. Someone had started a fire hot enough to liquefy aluminum, but not hot enough to destroy everything. And the question wasn't just who did it. It was why now? After 22 years? Why leave the ring? Why leave a message? Why bring it all back to life now? The carving on the back panel was burned into the minds of everyone who saw it. He came with us. It wasn't written with a knife. The grooves were jagged, uneven, almost like fingernails. Too deep for a child's hand. Too clean for panic. They weren't words of someone begging for help. They were a confession. Or a warning. Maybe both. Sarah's mother was the first to identify the ring. She hadn't spoken publicly in over 15 years. But when the sheriff showed it to her, she collapsed. The inscription said, "Stay." "I told her never to go near that park," she whispered. She promised she wouldn't go far. The last thing Sarah had said to her mother that morning was, "I'll stay close. I swear." When news of the bus spread, the town reacted like it was 1987 all over again. News vans, crowds of the old school, reporters knocking on the homes of grieving parents. One by one, the names came back. Sarah Tilley, Marcus Greaves, Dawn and Laura Burnett, Hector Wolfe, Shiloh Brooks, Cameron West, 20 names in total. 20 teenagers who had boarded the bus. But one name wasn't on any of the files. Not in the attendance list. Not in the school's yearbook. Not in the ranger logs. And not even in the minds of the families. A boy, thin, wearing red sleeves. In the photo, he stood behind Cameron. But his name wasn't known. The same boy the ranger remembered. He was in the photo, but never on the trip. The FBI reopened the case. Forensics were ordered on the bus shell, but the scene had been compromised by the fire. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, only one partial boot print in the dirt nearby. Old, size 9, and an unusual mark on the metal, near the driver's seat, a melted shape, a circle. Inside it, 2 vertical slashes, almost like tally marks. It wasn't part of the bus. It was added, etched into the frame, then burned over. Some believed it was a gang sign, others something older, a symbol not made for humans to read. The sheriff didn't want to talk about it, but one ranger did, Ellis Pike, the same man who took the photo back in '87. Now in his 70s, Ellis lived alone, deep in the mountains. He answered the call but didn't speak for 5 seconds. Then said, "You found the bus?" "Yes, but not them." "No, that's because they're not in your time anymore." Click. Ellis died 6 days later. Heart attack. That's what the autopsy said. But the sheriff who found him said his body was strange. His fingers were black at the tips, as if they had been burned. And under his bed, folded in a sealed envelope, was a photo, the one that had disappeared from the police file in 1993, the one where the red-sleeved boy had stood, except now he wasn't there. He had been erased. Everyone else was in place, but where the boy once stood, there was a blur, like the light had been around him, like he was never supposed to be seen. The FBI tried to scan the photo, but the blur remained. No editing marks, no chemical tampering, as if the film itself had been frightened, as if the lens remembered something the brain couldn't. Forensics ran one more scan, a spectrum analysis, UV and infrared, and they found something, etched faintly across the photo's lower border, invisible to the eye. Words. He watches from behind the glass. One by one, the parents were interviewed again, asked the same questions, given the same photos, and something began to emerge, not from what they said, but from what they didn't say. None of them remembered seeing the boy with red sleeves, not in the classroom, not on the bus, not even in town. One mother, Mrs. Wolfe, said, "I always thought there were too many backpacks, but I never said anything. I didn't want to sound crazy." The teacher's journal was also found, or what was left of it, charred pages from her satchel, pulled from the floor near the bus shell. Most were blackened, unreadable, but on one page the ink survived, scrawled in her writing. "He doesn't blink, doesn't speak, just stares. Is he one of mine?" A local paper ran the headline, "The field trip that never returned, now with a ghost." But it wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a legend, because someone remembered the boy, a retired janitor from Larkspur High, Mr. Dean Blaker. He was 42 back then. He remembered the morning of October 6th. He remembered watching the kids board the bus. And he remembered the last one in line. He didn't speak, just stared at me. "What did he look like?" they asked. "I don't know. I remember his sleeves. Red, like corduroy. But his face, it's just blank when I try to think of it." "Do you think he was a student?" "No, I think he was waiting for the bus." One more thing. On the floorboards of the burned bus, near the emergency exit, forensics found a piece of metal, folded like a box. Inside were the initials, DB, matching the janitor. But Mr. Blaker swore he never got on the bus, never dropped anything, never went near it again after that morning. Then how did your box get there? They asked. He went pale, then said, because that wasn't mine. It was my brother's. And he died in 1972. What began as a burned bus was becoming something else, something older, something that didn't belong to time. And the next clue wouldn't come from police, or family, or town records. It would come from a girl who shouldn't have been alive, but was. And she had a story to tell. She showed up at a bus stop Tuesday morning, April 7th, 2009. It was raining, cold for spring. The kind of rain that doesn't just fall, it seeps. The driver of the Route 5 shuttle saw her first. Thin, barefoot, wearing a torn school sweater from Larkspur High. No coat, no ID, just standing there. When the doors opened, she didn't speak. She just stepped inside and sat in the third row. He asked where she was going. She said, home. She was taken to the county hospital. She had minor bruises on her feet, scratches down her arms, but no signs of assault. She gave a name, Nora Marin, age 17. The nurse froze. Nora had been on the list, one of the 20 who vanished in 1987. She looked barely a day older than her missing photo, as if she stepped out of time unchanged. They asked her what happened, where she had been, but all she said was, the door closed, and we couldn't find our way back. The media exploded. A lost girl returned after 22 years? Unaged? Unchanged? Some thought it was a hoax. Others called it a miracle. DNA was taken. Fingerprints matched. Dental records confirmed. It was her. Nora Marin was alive. But that wasn't the most shocking part. What shook the agents, the doctors, even her family, was the drawing she made. They gave her a pencil and asked her to sketch anything she remembered. She drew a staircase. Old, twisting, covered in moss. But it didn't go down. It went up into blackness. At the top was a door, or something shaped like a door, but too tall, too thin, and in the doorway, something stood. Its arms were wrong, longer than they should be, bent backward, and it had no face, just red sleeves. They asked her who it was. She said, he waited at the back of the bus. I thought he was a student, but he never blinked, never moved. What happened after that? She looked at the wall, eyes distant. He got up when we reached the cliffs. He opened the emergency door, and the air changed. What do you mean? Like gravity folded. Light bent the wrong way. I think we stepped out of time. The sheriff's office released an official statement. It didn't include the details, didn't mention the sleeves, or the door. They said Nora was traumatized, possibly delusional. But the photo, the one found under Ellis Pike's bed, was still being analyzed, and new things were starting to appear in the blur. A faint shape, a second staircase, a mark like a spiral. One analyst said, it's like the photo is waking up. Nora refused to talk to anyone but her brother, Ben Marin. He was 19 when she vanished. Now he was 41. When they reunited at the hospital, he cried. She didn't. He asked where she'd been. She looked at him and whispered. He showed us the way in, but there was no way out. At night, she'd scream. Not words, just noises, like metal scraping glass. The nurses kept notes. One night, she woke up, standing at the foot of her bed, and said, he's still behind the glass, watching. Another time, she wrote a sentence on the wall with a crayon. Don't say his name. He listens. They never figured out who she meant. But When they reviewed the security footage, something happened. At 3:44 a.m. in her room, the camera glitched, only for 1 second. But in that second, she wasn't alone. A figure stood near her. Red sleeves. Too tall. No face. The footage was deleted. They claimed a technical malfunction. But 2 nurses resigned that week. One was seen packing up her locker, hands shaking. When asked why she was leaving, she said, "Because something followed her back." Nora escaped the hospital on May 3rd. No one saw her leave. 1 second she was in her bed, the next gone. No broken locks. No open windows. Just a folded paper left on her pillow. It was another drawing of the staircase. But now the door was open, and the thing inside had stepped forward, its arms stretched outward, its sleeves red, and beneath it, scrawled in childish handwriting, "He is patient. He waits." The town sealed the park again. More fences, warning signs, patrols. But that night, 3 hikers went missing near the cliffs. Their last photo showed them smiling, and behind them, deep in the woods, a shape, blurred, red at the edges, too tall. It wasn't over, and the door wasn't closed. The 3 hikers were never found. Not a jacket, not a shoe, no footprints leading out. Just their phone, dropped near the base of the ravine. The final photo still open, 3 smiling faces. And behind them, trees that didn't belong, bent, twisted, leafless, and in the far right corner, barely visible, a hint of red, like fabric, like sleeves. The media called it coincidence. Rangers said it was likely an animal attack, but the people in Larkspur, they remembered the bus, and they remembered Nora. This wasn't new. It was a return of something old. Ben Marin stopped sleeping. He searched the park himself. Daylight reigned, even into the fog-heavy evenings. He carried the last drawing Nora had left, the open staircase. Every night, he stared at it like a map. Every morning, he circled another section of forest. On May 12th, he found something, an iron ring, bolted into the ground behind the ranger's cabin. It wasn't connected to anything. Just there, a perfect circle of black metal. He tried to move it. It didn't budge. The ground beneath it was solid. But when he pressed his hand against it, he heard something, a hum, like distant wind inside stone. He reported it. 2 agents came to investigate. They brought ground-penetrating radar. The ring wasn't just bolted in. It was the top of something, a shaft, 6 feet wide, going straight down at least 50 feet. No ladder, no lights, no explanation. The FBI sealed it immediately, cited safety concerns, posted guards. But one of the agents, Sarah Kent, kept looking at the ring. She said it made her teeth feel wrong, like pressure was building from the inside. That night, the guards posted to the shaft vanished. Their radios were found, guns still in holsters. No blood, no drag marks, just a voice recorded on one of the mics. 6 seconds. "It's looking up at us." Larkspur went silent. The press pulled out. The town barricaded its own roads. Homes boarded up. It was like 1987 all over again. But this time, the town wasn't just grieving. They were afraid, because this time they had heard it. On May 15th, a boy named Levi Mornings, age 10, told his mother he had a new friend. She thought it was imaginary. He drew a picture. It was a man with red sleeves, standing beside a staircase. When she asked where he saw him, he said, "Outside my window." They lived on the 2nd floor. The sheriff called for help, but the state wouldn't intervene. Too little evidence. Too much fear. People began to flee. Those who remember the field trip left first. Others followed. By May 20th, over half the town was gone. But not Ben. He stayed because he'd begun having dreams of the staircase, of red sleeves, and of a sound like teeth chattering in reverse. Every night he saw a door, and every night the door creaked open a little more. He started writing journals, drawings, diagrams. He mapped the dreams, labeled the symbols, and noticed something strange. The staircase in his dream always had 20 steps. The same number of students who vanished. He started counting backward, in order of disappearance. Nora was step 7, which meant 13 steps remained. And if he was seeing the staircase open, was someone walking down it now? May 25th, a woman named Amanda Lowe reported her son missing. He was 9, last seen playing in the backyard. He left behind one thing, a drawing, a staircase, with his name written beside step 13. No one had told him about Ben's notes. No one could explain it. And that same night, Ben dreamed of the boy. He saw him climbing the staircase, slowly, one hand holding a red string, the other reaching forward. Then the voices returned, just like 1987. In the woods, campers began reporting whispers, coming from empty tents, from deep fog, from inside their own heads. They all said the same thing. He never left. A new photo was mailed anonymously to the sheriff's office, postmarked from within Larkspur. It showed the burned bus. But this time, the interior was different. There were 21 backpacks, one too many, and the far seat, the one behind Cameron, had a hat resting on it, red, corduroy. The sheriff had it tested. No fingerprints, no DNA, just a smell, sulfur and oil. But underneath the brim, tucked inside, was a note. He rides last. Ben began to spiral. He locked himself indoors, covered the mirrors. He said reflections were starting to linger, that sometimes in the corner of his eye, he saw red sleeves just before blinking. His final journal entry read, "The staircase is in place. It's an agreement. He shows you the way, and you go. You're not taken. You follow. And where he rides last, the door opens first." On June 1st, Ben disappeared. His house was locked from the inside. No signs of a break-in. No forced entry. On his bed, a photo. Nora as a child. Ben beside her. And in the window behind them, a blur. Tall. Red. Watching. This was no longer a cold case. This was a countdown. Each step of the staircase was a name. Each missing person, a number. And now, there were only 12 steps left. June 3rd. The sun never rose properly. The clouds over Larkspur clung to the hills like skin. 12 steps remained. 12 names unclaimed. And now, it wasn't just people seeing things. Animals began to behave strangely. Dogs refused to go near the park. Birds stopped nesting. Deer froze at the edges of trees and backed away. At night, a low hum would vibrate through the earth, like something beneath the roots, something moving. The sheriff tried to evacuate what was left of the town, but many refused. Those who'd lost children in 1987 called it sacred ground. They didn't want to leave in case their kids came back. One mother said, "If they find their way out, I'll be waiting." But the town had changed. Windows now cracked without cause. Watches stopped at 2:44 a.m. Streetlights flickered in unison, then popped. At 2:44 a.m. on June 4th, 3 more people vanished. A married couple and their daughter, last seen walking back from a candlelight vigil. Their front door was left wide open, dinner still warm on the table. A family photo had fallen from the wall, face down, and scribbled in marker on the back of the frame. We heard him humming. June 5th, FBI agent Sarah Kent returned. She had been off duty since the shaft incident, but she came back with something, a box of old files. Unclassified, they weren't from Larkspur, but from a mining town in Oregon, 1983. 12 miners vanished underground. The only trace? A photo, a staircase, and a tall blur with red edges. Same story, different town, same ending. Kent believed it was connected, a pattern, a cycle. Every 22 years, something opened and something came through. She called it the mirror staircase, a structure not made of wood or stone, but of choices. Each step wasn't built. It was agreed upon. Each child that followed gave permission. That's why they don't scream, she said, because they step willingly. June 6, a man named Craig felt her launch a drone over park. He wanted proof. No monster. No staircase. No red sleeves. The drone never returned, but the feed uploaded live. And what it showed stopped hearts. First, trees, fog, birds, then a clearing, a spiral etched into dirt, 30 feet wide. And in the center, the staircase. Stone, moss-covered, twisting upward into nothing. At the top, a thin frame. And something waiting. It didn't move, but it breathed. You could see the slow rise and fall, even though it had no mouth. Just before the feed cut, the figure turned, looking into the lens. Red sleeves, arms too long. They sealed the forest again. But it didn't matter. The thing was already inside. That night, for people saw it in mirrors, not in front of them, behind them, standing inside the reflection, watching. June 7th, 7 children in a nearby town reported dreams of stairs. All drew the same shape. One boy refused to sleep. Said the man at the top told him, "You're next." His drawing showed 10 steps filled in, 10 names, and 10 blank ones left. Sarah can return to the woods, not to investigate, not to arrest, but to end it. She brought a team, thermite, explosives, flame. They reached the clearing by dusk. The staircase stood tall, the figure still waiting. And as they approached, the wind stopped, the birds vanished, and the air hummed. Sarah placed the first charge. The others set the perimeter. But just before ignition, a voice rang out from the top of the stairs. Not loud, not deep, just soft, clear, a child's voice. We said yes. Then another, older, familiar. He's already inside. The team ran. Sarah stayed. She lit the charge. Flames exploded. Stone cracked. The staircase collapsed. The trees shook. The ground moaned. And for 1 second, just one, the sky turned red. June 8th, the forest was blackened. The clearing gone. No staircase. No spiral. No Sarah Kent. Only one thing remained. A stone, smooth, oval, warm to the touch, carved into its face. She broke the chain. That night nothing happened. No vanishings. No humming. No dreams. For the first time in weeks, stillness. But the journal still existed. The drawings still sat in desk drawers. The whispers still echoed in a few heads. And somewhere, in some photo, in some mirror, in some child's sketchbook, he still waited, because the chain was broken. But the door had opened once, and what opens once can always open again. They thought it was over. After the fire, the silence felt holy. No more humming, no more mirrors cracking, no new names vanishing into the smoke. The red-sleeved man had disappeared, And for the first time in 32 years, the forest was just a forest. But peace is not the same as safety, and silence is not the same as stillness. What burned was only a staircase, not the memory. And memories, when burned, don't die. They spread. It began again, in the least expected way. In August 2009, a boy in Maine was found walking alone, disoriented, no ID, no injuries. He didn't speak for the first 6 hours, just sat in a hallway of the Child Services building, drawing spirals with red crayons. When a social worker asked his name, he finally answered, Cameron. The name meant nothing to the woman interviewing him until she typed it into the national database, and the alert turned red. Cameron West, one of the original 20, declared dead, vanished in 1987. He was 16 when he vanished. The boy now was still 16. He hadn't aged a day. He was flown to Missouri under escort, examined by 3 physicians. DNA confirmed the match. Bone density, hair samples, retinal scans, all said the same thing. This was Cameron. Unchanged, unaged, returned. But unlike Nora, Cameron didn't speak in riddles. He was calm, clear, and somehow cold. When asked where he had been, he simply said, "We waited. Where? Beneath the days." What does that mean? He kept us in the folds. He bent time. We stood still while you moved. They asked about the red-sleeved man. He nodded. He waits at the edges. He can't enter unless you look. So what happens now? Cameron paused, then said, "Someone looked again." The investigators asked for clarification, but Cameron simply looked out the window, toward the trees, and whispered. He never left the staircase. He brought it with him. That night, the hospital lost power, only for 4 seconds. But when the lights came back on, Cameron was gone. No windows broken. No doors tripped. Just a single page torn from a notebook, left on his pillow. A drawing. The staircase again. This time, folded in on itself. A spiral staircase with no center. Just a loop. And scrawled beneath it. It never ends. It just changes shape. News never reached national TV. The FBI sealed the case under emergency jurisdiction. But inside Larkspur, a different silence settled, because some residents began to forget, literally, names that once sparked sorrow, now drew blank looks. Someone mentioned Ben Marin at a local diner. The waitress blinked. Who's that? She had lived next door to him for 11 years. His house was still there, mail still delivered, but the nameplate on the mailbox was blank. In the town archive, files were vanishing, not being stolen, not misplaced, gone. Whole pages eaten by decay. Names faded from birth records. Even photographs, like ink was being undone. A librarian named Cassie Bloom was the first to say it aloud. It's like the town is forgetting itself. Then came the second storm, September 3rd. Rain with no thunder. Gray skies that didn't move, and a smell in the air. Not smoke, not rot, something mechanical, old metal, like a train engine left in the woods. That night, 17 people across 4 counties reported the same dream. They were on a bus, empty, driverless. The windows were black, and at the back, a figure stood. He never moved. Never blinked, just stared. One man, Julian Marks, woke up with blood coming from his ears. Doctors couldn't explain it. He didn't sleep again for 3 days. When he finally did, he vanished. Bed undisturbed. Window sealed. Only the sound of wheels and gravel was heard by his neighbor. No vehicles were seen. In Larkspur Elementary, a first-grade teacher found a note left in her desk drawer. No name, no handwriting match. The note read, "He rides last." Under it, a list, 20 names. Same names as 1987, except 2 were crossed out. Nora, Cameron, and one more name had been added at the bottom. Yours. Agent Sarah Kent was declared dead, but on October 11th, her badge was scanned at a security checkpoint in Kansas City. 4 hours later, a janitor found a red jacket draped over a railing. On the rooftop, a notebook inside its pocket contained a single line. "I saw the other side, and I was seen." This wasn't about a bus anymore, or a park, or a burned vehicle found in the woods. This was about something older than memory, older than language, an agreement made when someone or something was looked at for too long. A deal, a loop, a staircase walked in silence. The humming returned in late October. This time, not just in dreams, but in recordings, in phone calls. Static that wasn't random. It carried patterns, like a name repeated backwards. Linguists analyzed it, found nothing human. Audio engineers filtered it, and still no match. But one blind man, age 74, was asked to listen. He wept, said, "That's the sound I heard the night my son disappeared in 1987. That's the sound of a hand I never saw pulling him back." It was clear now. The fire had ended one chapter, but not the book. Something had returned with the children, or maybe they were never truly gone. And as the year darkened, more dreams came. This time, not just of stairs, but of mirrors. Mirrors that didn't reflect. Mirrors that opened. And one by one, people began to whisper again. He is patient. He waits. He wears red. He rides last. The town forgot the names. The files decayed. But one box remained. It was found in a barn, sealed in rusted chains, beneath the floor of a house that hadn't been lived in since 1990. No one knew the house's owner. The deed had vanished from records. And when a new buyer tried to renovate the property, they found the hatch. Inside the box, a worn leather logbook, a badge, and a wallet. The badge read, "Wayne Mercer, District Driver 3. He had driven the bus the day the 20 vanished, but he hadn't been counted among the missing because they had assumed he never got on." Wayne Mercer was a recluse, a substitute driver. No family, no known address. He had filled in for the regular driver that morning, October 6, 1987. His signature was on the log sheet. His ID badge had been used to unlock the gate. And then he was never seen again. His bus burned. His route never resumed. Some thought he left town in guilt. Others assumed he had died in the fire. But now his logbook had resurfaced, and what it said rewrote everything. It began 2 months before the field trip. In an entry dated August 3rd, 1987, Wayne wrote, "Something wrong with the mirrors. Bus 47 reflects the road before I turn the wheel." August 11th, saw someone in the rear view. I was alone. August 28th, children quiet today. All 20 of them staring at the back seat. Nothing there. September 2nd, woke up in the driver's seat. Don't remember driving. Then came the final week. October 1st, red jacket in seat 20. Left it at the depot. Next morning, it was back. October 5th, the day before the trip. Got the call. They want me to sub tomorrow. I said yes. I shouldn't have. And the last entry, October 6, 1987. He got on. Last one. I never opened the door. Kid saw him too. No one screamed. We left the road, but the tires still turned. He brought the stairs with him. If you're reading this, Don't try to find us. You don't find the staircase. It finds you. Inside the wallet, a folded photo. The same 1987 field trip group photo. Except this one was different. All the students had their eyes blacked out. With pen? No. Burned out. The girl in the center, Sarah Tilley, was circled in red ink, and next to her, written sideways. She said yes first. The sheriff brought the evidence to state agents. It was taken, filed, suppressed, but someone had already copied the pages, and online forums began to surface. Not about ghosts, not about cults, but about locations, places that shared the same story. A coal town in West Virginia. 12 kids vanished in 1954. A staircase was seen in the ash. A forest in Sweden, 1969. A bus tour for orphan boys. They never arrived. Witnesses described a boy in red sleeves, sitting at the back. In each case, no survivors, no footprints, a lingering hum in the trees. One post read, "The man with no face rides last. If you see him, don't blink." But Larkspur wasn't done. A new structure was discovered during construction of a water treatment plant 5 miles outside town. It wasn't visible from the surface, just a concrete pit, buried under 80 feet of soil. Inside, a spiral stairway, made of bone and rusted steel. The workers who found it quit. All 7. One claimed to have seen a face at the top. Another went blind 2 days later. The city sealed the pit. No statement was made, but a blurry cell phone photo was leaked. It showed 20 steps, one for each missing student. At the base, a new step was forming, number 21. It had no name, just a symbol, 2 slashes, and a circle around them. The residents who hadn't fled now faced a harder reality. This wasn't a haunting. This was an infection. And Wayne Mercer wasn't the only carrier. The staircase wasn't a place. It was a pattern. And patterns repeat. One night, an elderly woman named Madeline Boyd, a former school librarian, stood in her backyard, facing the trees. She was humming. A neighbor heard her say, "I see you again." Then she stepped forward into the woods. Gone. She was never found, but her slippers were left behind, side by side. Inside one, a folded index card, written in pencil, Step 22. The number of steps was growing, and as they grew, so did the memories. People who had forgotten the names began whispering them in their sleep. Cameron, Sarah, Marcus, Laura, Ben, Nora, over and over, like a chant, like an offering. A psychologist studying mass delusion visited the town. She left after one night. Her only note, the dreams aren't shared. They're handed down. This is not trauma. This is inheritance. In the local museum, a cracked display case once held a copy of the school yearbook. It shattered overnight. The yearbook was gone, but burned into the velvet lining of the case. Time doesn't forget. It replays. The truth was now clear to some. The staircase doesn't take you once. It loops. It repeats. It changes faces, but keeps the same smile. And each time it returns, it brings one more step, one more seat on the bus. And somewhere behind the reflections, beneath the ground, at the edge of sleep, he still waits. Some don't forget, even when the world wants them to, even when the papers vanish, the photos fade, and the town rewrites its own history. Some hold on, and some fight back. It began with 5 of them, people who'd lost siblings, children, friends. Laura Pike, sister of Ellis. Jeremy West, cousin of Cameron. Detective Callum Price, who'd investigated the original bus in 2009, Cassie Bloom, the town librarian who had watched the names fade, and Father Quinn, a priest who had once heard confessions from the families left behind. They called themselves the Loop Breakers. Not a cult, not a rescue mission, just 5 people who believed this thing could be undone. They gathered in the old library basement, surrounded by scraps, clippings, Xeroxes, photos that had survived by accident or miracle. They laid them out in a circle, one name in the middle, Wayne Mercer, the substitute bus driver. They believed he was the key, not a victim, not a villain, a link. They studied his logbook, not just the entries, but the spacing, each line written, then an exact pause of 22 blank rows, over and over. When Cassie ran the spacing pattern through a music analyzer, it generated a tone, a hum, the same hum heard before the disappearances. Wayne had written sound into silence, like a warning. They found something else. One of Wayne's old invoices from 1987 had a second signature. It wasn't his. It was the name, D. Carroll. They searched every database. Nothing. Until Jeremy West remembered something. His father once worked for the school district. He'd mentioned a man named Carroll years ago. Said he worked maintenance, but never showed up, always got paid. No address on file. When they checked the building logs, they found one key card still active from 1987, ID number 0021 DCRW, and its last use, the night before the field trip, at 2:44 a.m. They traced the ID to an abandoned school annex. Boarded up since 1991, the town claimed it had been condemned. Inside was rot, mold, decay, but deep in the sub-basement, they found a door. It wasn't old. It was pristine, metal, seamless, no hinges, no handle, just a mirror built into its center. And behind the mirror, they could see it, the staircase. They set up camp. Camera, audio, EM field monitors. But electronics glitched. Batteries died. The only thing that stayed clear was the mirror. Each night, the reflection changed. The staircase twisted, bent in different directions. Sometimes up, sometimes sideways. Once, it even curved into itself. And on the 7th night, a face appeared. Not human, just a smile without lips. And sleeves. Red. Father Quinn stood in front of the mirror for hours. He whispered prayers. Then questions. What do you want? Why here? Why children? No answer came. Until one morning, they found writing on the basement wall. Not spray paint. Not marker. Ash. It spelled, "We never left. We never grew. We never forgot." They realized something. The kids hadn't just vanished. They had been preserved. In a loop, in a silence, held still by something that refused to let time pass. It wasn't murder. It wasn't haunting. It was caging. They devised a plan, not to destroy the staircase that had already failed, but to walk it, not out of curiosity, but with a weapon. Cassie believed that memory itself was the key. This thing fed on forgotten things. So if someone entered remembering everything, every name, every step, every missing voice, maybe the loop would collapse. But walking it came with risk. You might not come back. You might not even be yourself if you did. Jeremy volunteered. He was the youngest, the quietest. But his cousin Cameron had never really returned. And Jeremy wanted answers. They prepared for 3 days, built a rope tether, recorded his heartbeat, injected a tracker beneath his skin. And on October 27, 2009, Jeremy West walked through the mirror. The mirror did not crack, did not ripple. He just disappeared. The rope tightened, then went slack. 31 minutes passed. Then, pulling. The rope jerked. Hard. Then again. Rhythmic. A pattern. Like someone sending Morse code. Cassie recognized it. 3 to 4, 2 to 1. The numbers matched Wayne's logbook. Entry 3, staring at the back seat. Entry 4, saw someone in the mirror. Entry 2, the road reflects before I turn. Entry 1, something wrong with the mirrors. It wasn't random. It was confirmation. Then the rope pulled tight, and Jeremy came through. He collapsed, shaking, eyes open, bleeding from the nose. He spoke a single sentence. They're not children anymore. Cassie tried to reach him. Father Quinn prayed over him. But Jeremy sat up and began to draw. Not the staircase, not the red sleeves, but a spiral of names, starting with the 20 from 1987, then Wayne Mercer, then Cameron, then Sarah Kent, then his own name, then 5 more blanks. And at the center, he rides last. Jeremy looked at Cassie, whispered, he keeps the names, but he doesn't know what they mean. If we take them back, he unravels. The loop breakers made their decision. Each would walk the mirror, one at a time, one holding a different memory, not just of the missing, but of what they'd meant. A song they sang, a lunch they forgot, a game they played, a seat they always chose. Not grand, just human, the kind of thing a monster can't fake. Each one entered. Quinn, Laura, Cassie. Callum never made it. He hung himself the morning of his turn, a note pinned to his shirt. The staircase is inside me. The others never returned. The mirror vanished a week later. The room sealed itself. Literally, the door fused shut. No heat, no fire, just closed. But the humming stopped. The dream stopped. For the first time since the bus was found burned, the staircase went silent. Jeremy lived 6 more days, then passed in his sleep. In his hand was a final drawing. The staircase again. Still 20 steps. But now, each one had a name, even the last. His own. Some stories end with light, some with answers. But this story never wanted to be solved. It wanted to be remembered. And remembering hurts. November 1st. Larkspur went quiet again. No vanishings. No voices. No dreams. The staircase had not been seen in 23 days. No mirrors shimmered. No humming returned. The town rebuilt its fence. Closed the trails. Canceled the fall festival. And one by one, people went back to pretending. Back to forgetting. But memory doesn't die. It waits. In the attic of the library, a box was found. Not marked. Not labeled. Just old. Inside, 20 letters. Each in a child's handwriting. Each addressed to someone real. To my mom. To my brother, Eli. To whoever finds me. All written in 1987. All dated October 6th. The day they vanished. Letter 1. I saw something in the mirror today. It waved at me. Then it walked backwards into the woods. I think it wants me to follow. Letter 7. He said if I remember who I am, he can't keep me. But it's hard. Every second here feels like forgetting. Letter 14. He hums when he's near, and I forget what I was scared of. Letter 20. Please don't stop looking. If you stop looking, we're gone. Cassie had written names on a spiral. Jeremy had drawn steps. But these letters were not diagrams. They were cries. Tiny voices trying to stay heard. Inside a place where sound didn't echo. A historian studying the letters ran them through linguistic software. Each child's word choices shifted midway through. Personal pronouns dropped. Sentence structure unraveled. Vocabulary shrank. It was like memory being slowly rewritten by something watching. The historian's final note read, "It was not just a trap. It was a teacher. Something wanted them to forget what it meant to be themselves. It needed them blank." The final artifact was found in early December, not in Larkspur, but in Ohio. A security guard at a scrapyard reported finding an old school bus wedged between rusted vehicles. It hadn't been registered. No ID, no license plate. Inside, everything was untouched. Seats still bolted, windows intact, but written in dust across the back window. Time folds. We unfold. There was a single passenger, a mannequin, wearing a red jacket and pinned to its chest. A Polaroid, the 1987 class photo. But this time, the children's eyes were glowing, burned into the surface, like light had pushed its way out of the paper. And in the bottom corner, someone had written, "Will the children wait?" People who read that photo often forget what they were doing, lose track of hours, stare into corners. One man drove 2 towns over and couldn't remember why. A woman began speaking in rhyme. A 6-year-old who saw the picture could name all 20 children by name, even though he had never heard of Larkspur. Some believe the staircase is gone, that the loop ended. Others believe it only moved, that it now waits somewhere else, in the shadow of another town, another forest, another classroom, where one mirror hangs too low, where a staircase bends wrong in a dream, where humming comes from nowhere. But there is one more thing, one last thread, still uncut. The sheriff's station in Larkspur was cleared out in 2020. Budget cuts, no crime left to solve. In the empty evidence locker, a file was found, unmarked, dust-covered. Inside, an envelope. It contained a class photo. Same 20 faces. Except this time, 21 children stood there, and in the back row, a boy no one recognized, red sleeves, smiling, and scribbled in ballpoint ink beneath him. He said, "Yes, lass." They never did find his name. No record, no match, just a whisper that some of the officers remembered from 2009. One of the children, Nora, had said something when they showed her the picture. He wasn't with us at the start. He walked in after the door opened, and the bus, it still burns in the town's memory. Some say the fire is what started the end, but others, those who hear more than they say, believe the fire was a warning. The bus wasn't destroyed. It was released so it could keep driving, so it could pick up more. Because even loops get hungry. Even silence echoes if no one listens long enough. There are now 21 names. Some say 22. Others say the staircase grows by one. Every time we tell the story, that remembering feeds it. That looking too closely invites it back. So if you ever dream of stairs, spiraling endless with no top or bottom, and if you hear humming, don't look behind you. Don't blink. And whatever you do, don't ride last.